Hello and welcome everyone again. I've got my guest Brandon Tyree here, CEO and founder of Alpha Information Science. Thanks for joining us, Brandon.
Happy to be here.
Cool. So, Brandon has a fantastic and interesting life story. You actually started as a lawyer early in your career, and now you work in AI. Walk us through that process a little bit.
Well, yes, thank you for that. Interesting. Yes, yeah, I thought it was interesting too. But so I started off as a lawyer, right? I started off putting together things called real estate investment trusts in Atlanta at Alston and Bird, wonderful firm. And that's actually where I first started researching AI. And the idea was, and who knows if anybody from Alston and Bird is listening, but I wanted to build software to automate my current job at the law firm. I was finding information in these long documents and did some research in AI. I had some friends where I went to undergrad at Stanford, point me in the right direction, but it wasn't there yet. But regardless, I ended up leaving the law firm. I was only there for a little bit less than a year. Started a startup, ended up exiting that startup, sold that, and since then have been building software for enterprises ever since. And then recently made the full shift to only working in AI and focusing on private equity and their enterprises, and also given my experience in law, we do some work with law firms as well.
So, how long has it been since that first idea of, hey, I'm a lawyer fresh out of law school, but this AI thing seems promising, to then, getting started building stuff in AI and then, going full time on that now?
Well, if my gray hair doesn't already date me, we will do the timeline. So I graduated law school 2010. That was during the subprime mortgage crisis, so we didn't get into the office in 2010. I started my work in 2011 at the law firm, left by 2012. That's when the first inclination on AI, this could be doing something, or really, what I'm doing is pretty inefficient. There's got to be some ways, because I built software in the past, so 2012. Left the law firm, and then had sold the first company by, I want to say 2016, and then building software ever since. And then it's been about 2 years or year and a half exclusively AI consulting. So, yeah.
The reason I ask the timeline is I find people's entry points to AI really kind of changes a lot of their expectations and perspective. And, you started all the way back in 2011, which, nowadays some people think if you started doing AI stuff in 2022, you were really ahead of the curve. We've just seen such a rapid progression and development. How do you, from your perspective, how has things changed? And why did you decide to do the full leap when you did?
Yeah, so definitely the time period that I've been interested in researching AI has affected how we work as a company today, right? We have seen a much longer timeline. And this was even before transformers were an idea when we started. So it has been something that having that sort of long timeline that a lot of people don't have. We look at AI a little bit differently, and I'm happy to get into details, but we don't use AI as a fully baked solution, right? Some people, and speaking of law firms and legal use of AI, some lawyers got in trouble with using AI to write briefs and responses to the court. So we stay away from that, probably because we've seen the progression. And given that we've been looking at AI, and I've been looking at AI for a long time, we see we're a little bit more focused when we think about how to use AI as a tool, not necessarily a full solution. We see it as definitely as tooling.
Yeah. So, and just to recap right now, your firm is consulting and implementation for private equity and law firms. But I want you to expand on that a little bit, where you're
Sure.
talking about you're not using AI, maybe start to finish or
Hmm.
to produce the end product, because that's obviously counter to a lot of
Hmm.
current narratives out
Hmm.
there, where people are saying I'm building these super advanced workflows, it's doing automated work for me, AI agents are doing that stuff. And
Yeah,
obviously I've promoted some of that because
of
I
course.
think the promise is partially there.
Oh
But
yeah.
I also see on your side as well, uh, to me, there's still massive amounts of value,
Oh
even
yeah.
if you're not automating the whole loop. So tell me more about kind of your differentiated approach.
Yeah. It kind of comes down to sort of a reductionist approach to AI as a tool, right? Uh, in order for AI to be successful, you need to have data, right? You need to organize that data in a way that AI or the LLMs can understand it. And you need to be able to take the outputs and do things with it and improve your process, right? So we take a reductionist approach on, okay, step one, two, three. Let's make sure we have all those things, and then we find the smallest bit of useful process we can, and iterate off that. And then as we grow, of course, the process gets longer, right, and much more complex. And that's where we got wonderful things like agents, and that's not to say that agents aren't useful right now. But maybe I can give an example of sort of the
That would be
difference
great.
between the two. Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to the legal example, right? There's one thing to be able to, and I think some people think when they think AI is like, hey, write me a contract for this type of work. And maybe if you're being a little bit more give it a better prompt, I want to use these clauses, and then take the output from that and run with it. Right, that's your contract. Right,
Hmm.
and that can be useful. Right, a lot of people can make that useful. In that, okay, I see this as a starting point. I'm going to carve it up and do a lot of things with it. But of course, people on the other hand will take it and run with it. And like I said, as we've seen in the news, some people have. Um, but here's how we think about this differently.
Hmm.
Okay, the end goal is to write a contract, right? At the end of this process, we want to have a working contract. Um, Instead of getting all the way up to contract drafting, we take, okay, what are the requisite parts to write this contract? And for me, I think back in my legal training, I remember exactly what I was doing when I started thinking about AI was
Yeah.
going through all of these other filings or other contracts that we've done in the past and finding similar clauses to what I wanted to say in my contract. And that's a piece of work that is a part of this longer process that we can unleash AI on. So we build AI to give humans better information so that they can continue on with the process. And then, of course, we extend that process as long as we can. But that's how we think about sort of building blocks and the difference between how people may think about AI.
Yeah, that approach makes a ton of sense. And it's funny you talked about you've been in the space for so long, because, like you said, pre transformers, a lot of what AI machine learning was advanced logic systems,
Hmm.
expert systems. And so it sounds a lot, your approach is very
Oh, yeah.
inspired
Yeah.
by, your early
Hmm.
examples and exposure to AI.
Yeah.
And I find that really fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me, I guess, a little bit more about how you actually interface with the client and you actually
Hmm.
go about that process, because that's a challenge that I see, is lack of documentation, lack
Yeah.
of clarity across teams,
Hmm.
individuals within teams. So in my imagination, yeah, it sounds fantastic. Come in here, let's document this process, let's
Hmm.
put in the pieces that AI can replicate. And we're full steam ahead. But I imagine reality is not quite as simple.
Yeah, I wish it was that easy, and I was actually just having a conversation this morning about that. And it
Yeah.
goes back to my, my experience, building production software.
Mhm.
It's one thing to build a proof of concept, right? And proof of concepts are very interesting and exciting, right? But there's all this work that you mentioned that takes to support that proof of concept, and again, taking this sort of long quote unquote long history with AI, a lot of it has been building production grade software for enterprises. So, and to get to your example, or excuse me, your question of how we interface with clients and how we may be a little bit different, we have this production ready set of skills. And we know, and where we are opinionated is, we do advising, we do sort of lighter touch, keeping people apprised of the updates in AI. But when we're talking about building software, there's Palantir has this idea of a forward deployed engineer, right? And we have something similar. I was actually talking with a board member of Palantir the other week and reminded me that, oh, this is similar. But we embed ourselves in a perfect world. We embed ourselves deeply with the client, because that informs us in a lot of ways. It informs us on the business side of things. How does this business process work? Right. And then the infrastructure side of things. Okay, what infrastructure is here? How many users are we having? Informs that decision. And then also there is the sort of user experience aspect of things that I've seen ruin a production piece of software or proof of concept if it's not properly addressed. So I can go into those in greater detail, but that's sort of how we deploy engineers deep in with the client to understand not just software concerns, but business concerns, infrastructure concerns, and user concerns as well. And that allows us to make better software both in production and for the client.
So, yeah, and to dig into that a little bit
Sure.
deeper, how, you know, how long are certain engineers embedded with a
Mm-hmm.
company, or how long's an engagement? Because, if I'm a business thinking, hey, I want to work with Brandon,
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to kind of transform my business. How long does it take to see results, right?
Yeah.
What do I have to do to go through the steps of this process to get a
Mm-hmm.
high quality outcome, and what
Yeah.
do I have to be prepared, I guess, as a customer of you, to provide to actually guarantee high quality outcomes?
Yeah. And again, I'll mention that we have, a wide range of sort of things that we do, right? As I said before, lighter touch advisory, where it is, hey, we understand. Let's find out the things you're looking for. Let's take a law firm, right? What are some things that are on your AI advisory board's mind? We come in and we provide our technical knowledge and our know-how when it comes to law firms on, okay, here's some a deeper understanding of what's out in the market and so on and so forth, right? But when let's talk about building actual software and tools to use. Lucky for our clients, they get it. They get to take advantage of all of our years of experience in building this production grade software, right? So on the infrastructure side of things, we rarely meet a deployment that is tricky when it comes to amount of users, because given who we work with, our user base is relatively small. There's only so many people at a law firm, and
Sure.
we've had experience building apps that reach millions of people, right? So this is on the easier side of things. Um, but when it comes to what to expect, you know, some of our engagements only last 2 months, right? And you're probably asking yourself, well, Brandon, you've got this deployed engineer. How can you do that? Well, we have so much experience with these processes that our clients get to take advantage of that, right? While certain processes are similar, right? Let's take the diligence example, right? When we work with a private equity firm on helping them with the diligence process, it's similar to when we work with a law firm to help them with the doc review process, right? Not exactly the same, but it's relatively similar. So we already have a lot of the pitfalls and we've taken the lumps. We know the technical things to shorten that experience. So, like I said, a couple of months is probably the shortest engagement that we work with. And quickly to answer your question about what can a client expect to have to offer? We take care of things from beginning to end, right? All we ask for is access to your users. We take care of user interviews. We build software to track user interactions, to track quality of output. So we have all of these proven mechanisms to get the information out of either your organization or your people. So really just access, right? And we understand work needs to be done, so we're not we're not a big draw on your employees' time, but it really is just access, and we take care of the rest.
Do you have one quick tip you can share on how to do a high quality user interview for people?
So one takeaway, all your assumptions on how things work, throw it out the window, right? And that's not just a general thing that I do. It's something in the beginning of every single interview. I have a checklist. And the first thing on the checklist is throw out all your assumptions. And I remind myself on every user interview, because we go back and review our interviews. And I'm often, even though I've done these for who knows how many times, I find myself sort of leading the witness, going back to the legal side of things. So that's something that's really important. And record everything. Now it's possible and a lot easier.
I think that's honestly a fantastic insight because to me, it illuminates how so many people are talking about, AI code gen this, or, assisted LLM writing or coding agents. But if you did the user interview wrong and then you fed the AI, even if the AI agent was writing stuff, at the end of the day, your core insight was wrong. You didn't give it enough context, enough data. The interpretation of that was incorrect or biased in some way. Then you end up building the wrong thing. And, we start off even worse than before because we spent time and money to do it. So
exactly.
I like that insight. And, the piece of advice of always being talking to users more, it's never wrong advice. But having an open mind when you're doing it is essential to talking. It's an essential part of talking to users. It's not an optional part.
No,
right?
No.
So we were talking offline earlier, and you had this statement or this idea that I wanted to unpack a little bit more. And you're talking about with a lot of the LLM providers today, they're coming out, not just with APIs to access their models, but to essentially versions of their own product or products, right? So Google has their AI Studio where you can access their models with a couple extra features. And then Google also came out with Notebook LM, which has become very popular, allows people to create podcasts, study guides, little pre-filled templates. Obviously, ChatGPT with Canvas and with their code writer, Claude with Claude projects. But where I want to go is you said something, there's a battle for user documents. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So it's not if you really think about it, it's not a sort of groundbreaking idea. With LLMs, there still is the battle for data, right? We see the conflicts on scraping and the discussion around that. And that's just an extension of that same idea, right? These LLMs, they need data to be useful. If you go back to my sort of three things, one of them was, you need data, right? In order to make an LLM or AI useful, right? And you have to organize that data, right? So it's an extension of that idea. And now you see with Notebook LM and also with ChatGPT, but there is hey, load all your stuff into Notebook LM, and this is completely normal. And when you load it here, we can do all these amazing things with it, right? But of course, they're not going to give you a way to quickly export it or things like that, right? It's ease on the way in. And it all makes sense because this is just an extension of the LLMs need data idea. And not to say that that they're using it for training. They may or may not. I haven't reviewed the contracts or anything like that. But the magic of LLMs now is growing, right? And I think people want to see useful implementations of LLMs. And in order to make it useful, you need to give people the ability to do it on their own documents, right? To quickly
Sure.
use it in mass. And that's something that we obviously build tools for, but I also see it in the greater LLM sort of battle. I think there's going to be a lot more ability for users to upload their documents, but not necessarily switch them documents from Gemini to ChatGPT. And we build tools to do that as well, to sort of allow people to make that choice.
Yeah, and Notebook LM, once again, a Google product.
Hmm.
All the Google models have much bigger context windows
Yeah,
than the other models. And
exactly.
so to me, it's not that surprising that
Hmm.
Google really innovated on this front of, hey, if we just give it a bunch more data instead of just a couple sentence chat query, even
Hmm.
with OpenAI where you can ramble for a minute or two, that is
Hmm.
obviously incomparable to upload a research paper,
Yeah.
both in the depth of insight and in just the raw quantity of words. But as a business owner and
Hmm.
someone who's deep in AI, how do you view the trade off
Mm.
between, okay, we're going to upload, let's say you go ahead and you upload all your user interviews for a particular client. I'm not
Hmm.
saying you've done this, but
No.
uh, would you, and
Hmm.
then create a podcast or internal material to kind of share the insights?
Yeah.
Or do you feel like that trade off is not good?
Yeah. I mean, we have very stringent, privacy requirements for a lot of our
Sure.
data, right? So we have arrangements with, OpenAI and Gemini, and we never upload something where we don't know, okay, how is this going to be used, right? So there's the first thing, right? But there is power to it all, right? There is, and going back to your idea, and this is a iteration on how I think about this. Each provider, Notebook LM, ChatGPT, is going to do different things, worse or better than the other. Like you said, Google has the long context windows. So it, I view it as a business owner. I want to be able to take my data, and just as an individual, I want to be able to take my data and, if I need long context windows, I want to quickly be able to use Google's things, right? Or, you know, OpenAI came out with O1 preview and mini. Oh, I want to use it with that. So that's what we try and build with our clients as well. We want them to be able to use their data wherever it's best put, right, for the task at hand. So that's what we think about that. But to answer your question directly, oh yeah, it's powerful. And when we can take that data, we use it on an API level and build software to chain things together. Oh, it's super powerful, and I definitely see the market going that way as well.
Well, it's funny because, like you're talking about, there's all these different superpowers
Mhm.
that are siloed from
Yeah.
each other. And so I find myself, I had a podcast recording that I did, and I took the audio file,
Hmm.
loaded it into Google AI Studio because Gemini Flash will basically just give you like a free transcription,
Yep.
and it's like pretty much 100% accurate.
Yeah.
And if you do it in the AI Studio, it's free. So I
Hmm.
take that transcript, I bring that into Claude and extract key insights, build a
Yep.
document off that, bring that to O1, start fleshing out a whole content plan,
Hmm.
bring content plan back to Claude, but I'm doing all this manually, all human in the
Yeah.
loop.
Yep.
If there was something that, started to synthesize all of that, I mean that would be incredibly powerful because even some of I've even been able to go pretty much from that to tweet to LinkedIn posts
Yeah.
that are insightful and in my own tone of voice, but I'm having to use Claude Projects, which doesn't have an API right now.
Yeah.
So there's these little siloed limitations, but
I
you have
mean,
to use your own human creativity to unlock kind of the superpowers of these models.
yeah. Oh, just quickly, you've unlocked our, secret business model. I mean, you've explained the exact situation our clients find themselves in, and that's why we use this sort of building block approach. Like you said, oh, I need to upload something to Google Studio, And I'll also mention, you mentioned it's free if I do it in Google Studio. So that is
Hmm.
indication that, hey, there's this, they will do it for free if you do it on their platform. If I use my API, it's not
Great
free,
point.
right? Um,
Great point.
yeah. So, but we do this for our clients. That exact, you're the exact process. That's a great example of understanding that process. There's probably quirks and features of that process. It's not enough to say, "Hey, I want to take a audio transcript and move it to a tweet." No, you need to understand all of those steps, and But again, that's what we do on a daily basis with much more boring things than end up tweeting. It's diligence materials
Yeah.
and Excel reports. But in any case, yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, let's jump into that because we've talked about kind of the consulting advisory arm of your business,
Hmm.
but it sounds like you're also spinning up, a new product
Hmm.
that individuals can utilize that's affordable. Tell
Yeah,
me about Diligist.
yeah. So, so as I said before, we see a lot of what our clients benefit from is our repeated experience, right? Every process is unique, but we see the same problems over and over and over again, right? And I made the example before. It could be diligence when it comes to private equity firms, they're diligencing a deal, or it's doc review on the law firm side, or it's whatever it might be called in the enterprise in between. So we deal with clients across that spectrum. And when we see um, issues and processes that come up over and over and over again, we are a software development firm at heart. So we can't help but spin out sort of consumer level products of our sort of higher level bespoke process improvements for our clients. And that's what we did with Diligist, Diligist.io. It's essentially a document processing tool. You can quickly upload documents. You can quickly make summaries of each of those documents. And all this is done at scale. You can extract information. Let's say you have a set of 100 contracts and you want to find out, I want to know the date, the parties, any pricing terms for all of these contracts. Diligist will do that, take those questions, get them answers, build automatic PDF reports with the questions and answers, and build reports that show in the source material where the system found its answer. So it basically cites its sources.
Mm-hmm.
You'll click on the answer, it'll automatically show it in the source material. So that's really how these things start and what Diligence does and how it sort of fits into our larger company as a whole.
And it makes a lot of sense. And it was interesting you pointed out you're a software company at heart because my question to you is traditionally consulting has been,
Mm-hmm.
your advisory,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you're building stuff using your knowledge, using your past experience. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing both.
Yeah.
Rarely are consulting firms rolling out their own,
Mm-hmm.
direct to consumer
Yeah.
products or software products. Is
Yeah.
that a trend you think is going to continue in the future?
Mm. It's funny that I had this exact conversation this morning. This one conversation we had is mirroring. I had is mirroring this conversation. We were talking about the ability for large consulting firms to roll out software.
Mhm.
It's tough, man. It is a tough thing to do, and no fault on these large consulting firms, but they're built to do a certain thing, right? And they're very good at building. I'll take this person's quote so people won't get mad at me. But someone who was an ex big consulting employee said these consulting firms are good at proof of concepts, right? They can build something very, very good, but the depth of experience to roll out a production level software is hard to do, and they're meant to do a lot of different things, and maybe they don't focus on that. And more power to them. That's why our business is a little bit different. We have this laser focus. We mostly work with private equity firms, right? But we expand into areas where we have expertise. Given I was a lawyer, I know that well. So, given you know my experience building production grade software and our focus allows us to do both. Just because it's very tough to have that depth of experience across a large swath of industries or areas.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense because for me, every type of business is unique and consulting is set up in a particular way. And if I was
Yeah.
a consulting firm, the salespeople that you have, the
Yep.
client relations people,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the developers are the same
Mm-hmm.
as, within a software company, maybe, right? But
Yep.
it sounds like even in your experience, the knowledge and experience and problem sets that developers are exposed to when they're working within a consultancy and
Mm-hmm.
within a true software product environment are very different. And
Yeah.
what I find really interesting about it is I think a lot of people would want you to believe because we can generate code,
Mm-hmm.
just products just kind of spawn up out of
I,
thin air. and
I
and I
wish.
think about the business model and the people operating that business model, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I see the disconnect between most traditional consultancies that you talked about. Well, their compensation is different,
Mm-hmm.
the types of people, I don't know how many marketing professionals that big or small consultancies have, but that's probably going to be different in different skill sets from D2C product,
Yeah.
software sold for $29. And
Yeah.
so that's why I think there will be more instances of it. But
Yeah.
the idea of consultancies just rolling out
Mm-mm.
boutique software for $29 a month, like you are, or something along those lines, I'm a little bit more skeptical on.
Yeah, and even before rolling out software, it is tough for big consulting firms to build production grade software. I mean, they're good at, even if it's within an enterprise. I'll be honest, a lot of our work, especially in AI and recently, has come from these. I don't want to call them divorces, but consulting firms who started an engagement with a large private equity firm, for example, and what was delivered either it wasn't up to expectations, or it was okay. We're going to use this consulting firm to create a proof of concept, and now we need to actually make something that's useful. And we're getting a lot of work in that way. And I'm sure there's somebody much smarter than me and that can quickly catch on, but my expertise comes from these reps, just doing it over and over and over. I think about all these things all the time, and the people that we work with and our employees, they have focused repetition on. They've seen all of this stuff before, and there's some things that we haven't seen that we can talk about. There's a voice activated real-time API that OpenAI just came out with, and we're implementing that. So, but it's all about reps and focus, at least for me, right? And
Yeah.
AIS.
No, it makes total sense because that's how I see AI amplifying the whole economy is not this simultaneous tearing down and building anew of every part of the economy where everything's on autopilot, but on each stage of the value chain,
Yes.
being able to do more,
Mm-hmm.
both in terms of volume and of quality in less time and less resources. And that's just a simple math equation. If we're able to produce more, but use less resources, and time is obviously a resource, money's a resource, then numbers should go up
Yep.
in the economy, right?
Yep.
And everyone still retains their kind of general place
Mm-hmm.
in the value chain, in the structure. Some companies are able to expand out their offering. Some of them are actually able to niche deeper
Yeah.
to provide a better quality service.
Mm-hmm.
But this, this general idea, like we've been swirling about, where kind of anyone who can code now has kind of free reign over any business
Mm-hmm.
idea, is definitely like one that doesn't quite resonate with me personally.
Yeah, not yet, right? There is a lot. I mean, definitely I will say this as someone who, I taught myself how to code. I could go get a tough software consulting or development job, but I have to study a bunch for it. It definitely has expanded my ability of what I can do by myself. So
Exactly.
we just take that idea of, let's do this for each one of our clients, just expand their abilities a little bit more. Focus on sort of the more boring step-by-step processes, just like you're talking about. Yeah,
And likewise, to me, it minimizes the friction points because,
definitely.
if you could code at A level here and then
Hmm.
with, AI, it's meaningfully up, but not like,
Definitely. Oh, no,
10
no,
years
no,
advancement,
no,
right?
no.
And so to me, it minimizes the communication friction where in the
Hmm.
past, maybe you would have written a PRD. Now you code
No.
yourself up a little POC. Here's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
in an hour, in 3 hours, in a day, whatever it takes. And you can let kind of the product speak for itself, start to build documentation off that. And instead of just only being able to verbalize just because of the speed, right, that it takes. But really, it's not actually speed. It's a function of you personally, your time's very important as a
Yeah.
CEO and founder.
Yeah.
And so it is literally too expensive for you to sit around
Exactly.
coding a proof of concept. But
Yeah.
now it's probably like a pretty decent ROI just because it can speed up the rest of the development team to execute your vision.
Definitely. Definitely. And right. And, you know, it allows us to take our knowledge, gaining all of these reps with processes, right? And implement that knowledge in a much more direct way. But yeah, you're definitely right.
So, as we kind of get to the end, I'd love
Sure.
to talk a little bit of predictions. Like we
Mm-hmm.
started out, you've been in AI for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
If I asked you back in 2011 if this is what AI would look like, I mean, if you knew that,
Yeah.
that would be very
No.
impressive. But
No.
let's just look 5 years into the future. What do you see on the horizon, and how are you preparing your company
Mm-hmm.
to take advantage and be well positioned for what's
Yeah.
coming?
So, um, uh, I don't know where we're going to be in 5 years, right? But I can only think that um, look back on the amount of um, progress we've made in the 10 years, right? Since I literally remember reading this paper about AI. And then in the past, 2 years, what has happened. Um, and, where we're going to be in 5 years, I think it personally, I don't really change what AIS is going to do. We want to develop um, focused experience in niche areas where we can deliver exponentially better outcomes than our competitors, right? And the boost from AI is always going to be there. So we focus on our clients, their niche down examples, and get those reps. So whatever boost comes from AI, we're still sitting at the top of the heap, right? But of course, all that's out the window if AGI happens in 5 years, right? Like then
Sure.
I'm going to be in the woods somewhere with a generator and some, access to water, and come on and visit. It's going to be a great time, but there'll be other things taking care of my other needs, and I'm just going back to
Sure.
nature.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's probably there's a lot of possibilities what can happen in 5 years because we can talk about this. We just built using the real-time API. I just finished it a couple of days over the weekend. And it takes all of our tools, our information retrieval. Essentially, we built an analyst that has access to thousands of documents, but can converse with you in a way that is shockingly human and has instant recall. So you can say, hey, what was the trailing 12 months of revenue for XYZ Corp in 2019? And what did you find that information on? And it can respond to you. So that's one of those moments where there's a step change, and who knows what's going to happen in 5 years. Um, but I'll say this to everyone: focus on getting reps in what you do, and so that whatever benefits come from AI, you have those AI benefits and those repetition benefits. Because that's what's helped me in the past and helped our company to this date. So that's kind of where I think about it. Who knows what's going to happen though? Yeah, 5 years from now, we'll see. I remember what was the famous generated video was Will Smith eating spaghetti or something like that looked all weird, and now what we have now is shockingly good. So
I agree. Yeah, I think, focusing on your area, focusing on your unique strengths and skill sets and continuing to develop that's going to keep you competitive. And
mhm.
then, staying as much on top of the newest and latest AI techniques as possible.
Yeah,
Couldn't have said it better myself.
yeah.
Thank you for the time, Brandon. Tell everyone where they can visit and
Yeah.
work with you.
Yep. You can shoot me an email, brandon@alphainfoscience.com. Shoot me an email. I love to talk about this. Like I said, I've been thinking about this for years, and only recently do people want to talk about it with me. So shoot me an email. I'm happy to chat at any point with anyone. But you can also find what we do at alphainfoscience.com. It'll have, we're actually in the process of updating our website. So by the time this comes out, it'll be updated. And you can check out some of the things that we do, how we think about things, some of our writings. So, and also on LinkedIn, Brandon Tyree, you can find me there. I'm happy to chat, whatever method. And if you're in Austin, that's where I live. Come shout, want to talk face to face, grab a beer, grab dinner. I'm happy to meet the old school way in any way we can.
Love it. Fantastic, Brandon. Thanks so much for your time.
Likewise. Thank you.